more trouble for Pakistan's embattled de facto military ruler General Asim Munir as lawmakers in Washington continue to pressure administration officials. Prominent Republican Congressman Joe Wilson, a member of the House Armed Services Committee, announced on Wednesday that he has nearly finished drafting the Pakistan Democracy Act bill, which mandates a 30-day determination of sanctions on Pakistan's Chief of Army Staff, Asim Munir. In a post on X, Wilson shared images of the draft stating that it is the U.S. policy to restore democracy in Pakistan. The congressman said, quote, "Grateful to be nearly finished drafting the Pakistan Democracy Act," end quote. He added, quote, "It establishes that it is the U.S. policy to restore democracy in Pakistan. It mandates a 30-day determination of sanctions on Asim Munir and reviews all generals, government officials, and their families for sanctions," end quote. The draft states, quote, "To authorize the imposition of sanctions with respect to certain foreign persons who have knowingly engaged in the wrongful detention and imprisonment of political opponents in Pakistan and for other purposes," end quote. Bipartisan elected officials in Washington have called for the release of former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan after increased engagement by Pakistani Americans with lawmakers. Mr. Khan has been held on frivolous charges for 571 days. Pakistan's military government has banned the country's opposition political parties from holding a two-day democracy conference in the capital, Islamabad. Local reporters stated that the venue where the conference was to be held, along with the hotel staff and administration, were threatened with heavy fines and the sealing of the business. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party, the PTI Movement for Justice, has formed a coalition of nationalist and regional political parties to establish an alliance for a protest movement against the undeclared martial law in the country. Journalists, academics, members of parliament, and human rights activists addressed the opening session of the conference, which was disrupted and ended abruptly after the military government's administration pressured the venue staff. A member of the opposition alliance Tehreek-e-Tahaffuz-e-Ain-e-Pakistan movement for the protection of the Constitution, former Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi said, quote, "Today there is no permission to even talk. Laws are being made to stop people from talking and to dismantle the judicial system," end quote. Referring to the recently promulgated Prevention of Electronic Crimes Amendment Act 2025, also known as PICA, which seeks to punish journalists and criminalize freedom of speech. Organizers have said they are determined to continue with the second day of the conference despite threats by the country's powerful military intelligence agencies. Journalists continue to pay the price in Pakistan for their independent views. Two more prominent Pakistani journalists have been taken off air after pressure from the powerful agencies of the Pakistan military government. Habib Akram, a political scientist and expert on electoral surveys, was stopped from conducting his nightly show on broadcast cable. Another veteran journalist, Khalid Jamil, said in a post on X, quote, "In the best interest of the management of ABN News and my colleagues, I have left the news channel. Now you can watch my news and views on my YouTube channel," end quote. Journalists have increasingly moved to independent digital media after the military government took complete control of traditional broadcast media. Last week, Current Affairs host Kashif Abbasi was also taken off air for an indefinite period after speaking about rigging in last year's general elections. Abbasi works for ARY News, whose star investigative journalist Arshad Sharif was hounded out of the country and assassinated in Kenya on October 23, 2022. In 2024, Pakistan's press freedom ranking declined, with Reporters Without Borders placing the country at 152nd out of 180 nations. Israel has launched a massive aerial assault on Syria's capital of Damascus, as well as other cities in the south of the country.
You might have heard Syria is being bombed again, and this time it's not its own government.
Local media sources reported strikes near Damascus as well as the cities of Quneitra and Dara, according to Robsite News. Residents of Damascus reported hearing the sound of planes flying several low passes over the capital and a series of blasts. The bombardment came hours after Syria condemned Israel's incursion into the country's south and demanded it withdraws, according to the closing statement of a National Dialogue Summit. The summit, organized by Syria's new government, aimed to outline the country's political roadmap after the toppling of President Bashar al-Assad in December. Syria's government said that Israel was violating the country's sovereignty and called on the international community to pressure it to stop the aggression, demanding an immediate and unconditional withdrawal.